Let's just say I'm a deep well of vivacious masculine energy. Like as always, I am Daniel Barrett here from betterquestionsemail.com. Every week I send out one email about clear thinking, trying to figure out how the world works. If you are interested in nerdy stuff and you want to read along, I would love to have you. betterquestionsemail.com. Today, I just want to share something really fascinating. In fact, I was like, maybe I'll write a whole blog post about this. But I stumbled across this video, and that reminded me of a whole kind of fascinating part of the world that I want to share with you. So first things first, let's talk about the video. Let's talk about what's going on, and then we'll talk about the connection that I kind of see here. So the thing that I want to share is this app called Randonautica. Randonautica. Now, you can get this on iOS and Android. You can also get it on the web. It's pretty interesting, right? And Randonautica has a lot of claims in it. It has a lot of, let's say, lore built around how it works. But the reason that I stumbled across Randonautica is I actually stumbled across this video, the title of which is TikTok Teens Find a Suitcase of Human Remains through the Randonautica app. So, what does this mean? So, first of all, I absolutely love the phrase TikTok teens. And I absolutely love the phrase suitcase of human remains, or as, infinite, or as I recently put it, a free suitcase. That's what you found. Anyway, so the idea here is that this video was posted on TikTok where these kids said they used this app, Randonautica, and it led them to this weird place, and they found a suitcase of human remains. Now, obviously, that would be terrifying if that were true. Nobody wants to find human remains. That's terrible. I will go out on a limb. I will just go out on a limb and say there's a 98% chance that this is fake. Okay? I'm almost positive. Okay? Almost positive the video is fake. There's no news story about it. It's just like a TikTok video. Most things on the internet are fake. Let's put that out there. But I was like, what's this app, Randonautica, that apparently helps you find human remains? Because that seems cool. So I went out and I looked up Randonautica. Now, Randonautica is pretty interesting. Let's dig in to Randonautica here. So let's look at this. Randonautica, the world's first quantumly generated choose-your-own-adventure reality game. This is the idea behind Randonautica. Randonautica uses a quantum number generator. There happens to be a free kind of open source quantum random number generator put online by this Australian university. And actually, you can just kind of Google it, like quantum number generator. Here you go. So the ANU Quantum Random Number Server. Now, what this does, this is a really fascinating thing in here if you want to get into this. Random numbers are generated in real time in our lab using the quantum fluctuations of a vacuum. There's all this stuff that's really fascinating that I don't understand, but the idea here is that it can generate random numbers, truly random numbers, and they kind of make them free to anybody that is interested. Okay, so that's the idea there. And in fact, here I can show you the quantum random number generator server. Here it is here. Uses a vacuum to generate random numbers. Pretty interesting idea, right? I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. Now, what the app actually does, what Randonautica does, is it essentially picks a couple of these random numbers for you and uses them as coordinates. It then puts the coordinates on a map using a radius of your location. So you give Randonautica your location, you say, okay, it's within a radius, and it picks a random point in that radius. So it picks a random point on a map around you, and then it says, go to that place. So that's what it is. It's a random number generator on top of Google Maps, and it says, go to that place. Now that in itself is okay, interesting enough, right? But what Randonautica then goes on to claim is that because quantum stuff, quantum theory, mimetic digressions, and a lot of other stuff. Basically, it says that you set an intention in your head. So you think really hard about a dog, or you think really hard about a suitcase full of human remains, and it picks the spot and it says, go to the spot. And as you go to the spot, you will then maybe come across something like the intention that you set. Maybe you see a dog. Maybe you see a suitcase of human remains. This is the idea. And if you go to it then says, I encourage you to share your experiences on the Randonautica subreddit. So if you go to and in fact, I will show you this. If you go to the Randonautica subreddit, you can find a variety of sources. I went randonauting and set my intent as a dog. I found a stray dog and took him home, right? We have on here this is the video. This is why you don't manifest death. They call this manifesting. You manifest the idea of death, and then you came across a human remains. I tried randonauting for the first time yesterday. Intent was creepy and bag. Our coordinates landed in the woods behind an old farm where we found strange rock piles, tires, and a bag that contained about 20 different ideas, credit cards and residency cards belonging to different women. Creepy bag? Well, yes. If your question is the bag full of credit cards and IDs of random women? Yes, that's a creepy bag. Okay. So this whole idea, you're setting a quantum intent. It's using quantum stuff, quantum, picks a number, and then you go out. So he says, yeah, I've tried it. It's rather interesting. Yes. Oh, I'm so into it. You have no idea how into it I am. I'm 100% into it. Right? Now, there are like layers of stuff going on here. And I find it really fascinating. The connection that I immediately made, which was really interesting to me, is the connection to cold reading. Now, cold reading, if you are not sort of immediately familiar, is the sort of broad term applied to a variety of magical sort of fortune-telling activities. So you can think of, it says, I've set my intent for a dog and come across as a fox. Is that close? Yeah, I mean, it's close to me. Like, it sounds close enough, right? So here's the connection. Cold reading, if you're unfamiliar, right? If you go to sort of like you sort of think of like the stereotypical, prototypical reading your fortune with a crystal ball kind of scenario, that is what's called in the magic community, and by which I mean the sort of mental magic community, a cold read. Now, of course, I want to be sensitive here because some people really believe in fortune telling, and actually like the act of fortune telling has deep cultural roots in a variety of, ethnic communities. And so I'm not saying that like that's that, but if you look at people who do mental magic, for example, on stage, they can reproduce a lot of what seems to happen in those situations using cold reading. So you can make whatever leap there you want. You can say that they're the same or that they're different, but I'm specifically talking about the mental magic arena of cold reading, right? So the idea of cold reading is someone sits down, you say, I'm going to read your future. I'm going to tell your fortune, whatever it is. I'm going to use tarot cards. I'm going to use a crystal ball, whatever I'm going to use, tea leaves, and I'm going to create this scenario. And what will happen is that an extremely high number of people, if they go through that situation, will come out saying, wow, it actually was really accurate. It came out as really true. I had this really emotional experience. They spoke to a dead loved one, all sorts of stuff. The common refrain here is they knew things they couldn't possibly have known. Now, if you ever get the chance, there is and in fact, I will show you that I highly recommend anybody at all interested in this read is this book called, let me pull it up for you, The Full Facts of Cold Reading by Ian Rowland. This is an absolutely fascinating book. If you are at all interested in mental magic or even just decision-making or any of this stuff, this is a really incredible book by someone who has done this kind of thing for a long time, including professionally, and now kind of speaks about sort of rationality and stuff. It's a really fascinating book. But in any case, Rowland lays out a lot of the tactics that cold readers use. And some of them, I think, apply very directly to what seems to happen with randonauting. Because I'm not saying that people who go randonauting don't have interesting experiences. I will point out that, of course, most of what you read on Reddit is fake. So just keep that in mind. But let's say they're all real, right? Whatever. So let's just put aside fakery for the moment. Let's think about what is actually happening in this scenario, right? Well, there's a couple things, right? One is that there is a really strong selection bias happening. What does that mean? Well, if you go randonauting and you don't experience anything that seems to connect to the intention that you set, you don't tend to then report it, right? People don't typically talk about or share or report non-events. And so if you just go for a walk and you go to a street near your house, because that's where Randonautica sent you, and nothing of particular interest happens, you don't share it. You don't post it on Reddit, and it certainly doesn't get a lot of upvotes, and so it doesn't seem to, be a part of the selection sample here, right? So whenever you have a situation like this where people are self-selecting to report, you end up getting a very skewed sort of selection. Okay, so there's selection bias happening. Two, there's confirmation bias happening. So if you, for example, set, like our friend DB here, our friend DB set the intention for a dog and came across a fox. And you can make the connection here. He said, is that close? Well, if it was me in that situation, I might say, like, yeah, that's close. It's a four-legged animal, and I set the intent for a dog, and I got a fox. Isn't that cool? Where in reality, obviously, it's just sort of a random event that you are then connecting in your head. You are confirming your intent in your head by kind of making a cognitive leap here, right? And that happens a lot, right? If you set sort of a thing for creepy, you are going to look for creepy things or things that could be interpreted as being creepy, even if they're not. So like a bag of garbage might be creepy in some scenarios, and it might, in other scenarios, it's just a bag of garbage, right? So there's a lot of confirmation bias happening. Sebastian says, so how often does it work, and how often do you seem to get results from it? Well, it depends on how you determine what work means. And that's kind of what I'm getting at when I'm talking about confirmation bias. If you're just looking for something interesting, then it's going to happen a lot because you're going to be looking for stuff. You're going to be paying attention to your surroundings. And actually, we'll get to why I think randonauting is cool and what I think actually the benefits of it are in a second. So I'm not saying that this has no value at all. What I am saying is that the idea that somehow you are influencing reality through quantum, whatever it is, by thinking of something, and then that thing is going to be there where it wasn't there before, I think that's complete nonsense, right? But what we are doing is setting up a situation where we are both putting ourselves in a situation where we are going to have selection bias, meaning we will remember the instances where we went randonauting and something cool happened, and not remember the instances where we went randonauting and nothing of particular interest happened. And we're setting ourselves up for confirmation bias, where we are really looking for things that are going to back up our sort of predisposition to think that randonauting is going to produce something cool. So I'm going to really be on the lookout for cool stuff, and then I'm going to see them. If you really think about the amount of things that are happening at any given time, it would actually be bizarre if you went randonauting, a handful of times and you didn't experience some kind of weird coincidence. Because of course, you're going out looking for coincidences. Of course, you're going to find them. And in fact, coincidences are happening all the time. Foxes and bags of garbage are always there. We just don't always see them because we're not looking for them, right? Now, to get to Sebastian's question where he says, how often does it work? And, how often do you seem to get results from it? Of course, it depends on what your results are. But here is the thing that I think randonauting, and actually randonauting does talk about this. If you look at they have kind of like what seems to be sort of like an early manifesto for this, right? About this idea of dimension jumping. There's a lot of scientific gobbledygook here. Right, but the most interesting idea that I found here that I think is really legitimate. It says There's probability blind spots, right? So yada, yada. Ignore all this stuff, right? It basically says, hey, in every single situation that you're in, there's a variety of decisions that you're probably going to make, feasible decisions that you can make at any given time, and those are limited in number. Right. So it's like, it's not feasible that I'm going to, just, I don't know, walk out into the parking lot and set myself on fire. Like, although that is theoretically possible, it is not probable in a universe, because it's like, well, why would I do that? Right. There's got to be something leading up to that. So the kind of extrapolation that they make is that means that no matter what choices you make and no matter how many variations of your day may pass, there are always some places you simply cannot be because none of the chains of your decisions lead you there. Now, I don't know exactly about that interpretation, but let's look at it this way. In your immediate surrounding area, there are places you're just never going to go, right? I think about this. I used to think about this as a kid all the time when you would drive on the highway and you'd go by those like little strips, right? They're little like whatever, dividers on the highway or whatever. And they've got plants. It's a place, but you're never going to go to that place, right? Unless you like need to pull over and pee off the side of the road, right? And so it's one of these things where it's like, okay, you have all these places around you at any given moment, right? In your neighborhood, around your house, wherever you go, where you're just never going to go. The probability of you ending up in that particular spot is essentially nil. And so, they say at this point, you will never be there. And that's not true, right? But the chances of you being there are essentially zero. And so what randonauting does is it short circuits that by just sending you to a random place. And so what that ends up doing is essentially just breaking your patterns. When I was in graduate school, I took a geography class, and that sounds boring, but actually was really fascinating. And one of the things that the teacher talked about was if you draw sort of a map of everywhere that you go, let's say over the course of a month, right? You just track everywhere you go. It's a really rather limited radius. And pretty much everybody operates in the same kind of average radial distance around wherever they live. 20% of the places that you've ever been, that's where you spend 80% of your time. Randonauting just breaks that pattern completely. It sends you to a completely random place. And in the course of sending you to a completely random place, allows you to see things you never would have seen. So that bag of garbage, even though it's just a bag of garbage, it is kind of cool to think, hey, I would never have seen that bag of garbage before. And I think the side bonus of the whole intention setting thing, which to me is pretty clearly pseudoscience, but the thing that's cool about it is that it sends you out with the intent to pay attention to your surroundings. Now, you could do this at any time, anywhere, without an app. But if it takes an app to kind of get you looking for cool stuff, you pretty quickly realize that most of the world around us, we just filter out. You don't see most of the things that you walk by. You can't. It's just too much data. You got to filter it out, right? But in the course of just opening up this weird little app that sets you up with this kind of creepy quantum lore and sends you out into the world, what you're really doing is being aware of your surroundings. And the combination of being really aware of your surroundings and sending you to a place you probably never would have been, I think that's pretty cool. So whether or not you buy into the whole quantum entanglement, whatever it is, lore, it's a pretty interesting application. I would just say use this as an opportunity to remember that we always fall prey to these two biases, right? Confirmation bias and selection bias. They are everywhere in our world, especially when someone makes any kind of pseudoscientific claim. So there's actually a really amazing opportunity to examine how these work in your own consciousness and maybe learn a little bit about your neighborhood and the area that you're in that you wouldn't have learned otherwise. So Randonautica, pretty cool. I hope you find it cool too. If you like this kind of stuff, this is exactly the kind of stuff I talk about every week in Better Questions, betterquestionsemail.com. I will see you soon.